dog lovers. I'm Lisa, the holistic groomer with Hazel, and we're here to bring you more great tips for a naturally healthy dog. Okay, Hazy, here you go. All right, so today I am going to discuss and share my recipe for my dog food topper. All right, so here it is frozen. This is how I freeze it, okay? I mark it, I date it, and I freeze it flat. You just, get it in your bag and you kind of, you close it maybe 3/4 of the way and you push it all flat, and then you close it the rest of the way, and it stacks beautifully in your freezer, but it'll defrost so much faster. And especially for you working people out there who come home and say, oh shit, I have nothing defrosted for my dog. Well, you put this in some water and it's going to be defrosted in no time. All right, but the stuff, I still have this Ollie container from back when I tried their frozen food. I put it in the refrigerator in this. So this is what it looks like, okay? This is what today's all about. This is all that's left from what I made for her yesterday, or I made it 2 days ago. And yeah, you can store it in the fridge for up to 4 days, really, if you don't let it get to room temperature and it's in a sealed container and you took good care of it. Yeah, you can keep it in there for 4 days, actually. The freezer, I always say 3 months. You don't want to freeze it longer than that, but okay, so what is this? What is it for, and what's it all about? Dog food toppers, they're not just for kibble feeders, but you kibble feeders out there are gonna love this. You're gonna love, 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 love. And you know how I feel about kibble, right? I've said it in plenty of videos. I am the anti-kibble coalition. No, I'm not. But yeah, no, I'm not a fan of kibble for various reasons, which I am just gonna run through quickly here. But if you're already feeding the best kibble you can find, and your head is spinning every time you try to figure out another way to feed your dog, don't knock yourself out. You can start right now by just turning the tides and counteracting some of the biggest problems with kibble just by adding a topper, adding some fresh fruits and vegetables, chopped up, pulverized, adding sardines, eggs, fresh meats, raw goat milk, bone broth, okay? First of all, you want to moisten kibble always, because one of the major problems with kibble is that it's dehydrated. And the dogs never seem to drink enough water to counteract that, and they're in a perpetual state of dehydration, and it's one of the reasons why so many dogs have kidney issues now. As they get older, they've been eating dehydrated foods all their lives. And they've done studies that show that the dogs, even the ones that eat their kibble and then go over and drink a whole bowl of water, they're still not drinking enough water to counteract that. So you always want to moisten your kibble. But the other biggest problem, other than inferior ingredients, which I'll mention in a second, but the other biggest problem is that it's way too full of carbohydrate. Kibble, it's think about it. It's like a cookie. It doesn't have to be refrigerated. It's hard, crunchy cookie. Well, how do they get it to be like that? It's an extruded food, unless you're buying oven baked, which I highly recommend. But it's got to be at least 60% carbs, and that's at least 40% too much. So this you can start counteracting that by making this food topper. All right, and adding it, and you're going to add, you can remove 20% of the kibble from that bowl and add 20% of fresh foods that I just mentioned, like this topper, and you're not disrupting the nutrient balance. 20%, okay? So fear not. The other thing I love about this topper, even for home cooked, because I'm a home cooker, right? But I add this topper to almost everything she eats. I rotate what's in it, right? But she always gets some kind of a topper. Why? Because I can scoop the food right out of the refrigerator. I only have to warm up a bit of the topper then. And then I add the topper to the food, and it warms up the whole bowl of food, and it gives it this delicious aroma, and then she wants to eat it, right? Okay, so yes, just like us, dogs they want variety. They do not want to eat the same food every day. That was the dog food industry that came up with that whole thing. Your dog doesn't care what they eat. They need nutrition. You aren't smart enough to know how to give it to them, so rely on us and just feed our bag of kibble at the same thing every day, and that's all they need. No, 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 no. And it was a marketing ploy. Come on. We're out there believing things that were just intended to increase sales that have no basis in fact whatsoever, and they don't. Before the 1950s, there was no commercial of dog food. There was no industry. There was no industrialized dog feeding and cat feeding. People knew how to feed their animals just like they knew back then how to feed themselves. So yeah, your dog wants variety, so give it to him. And you know what? You could technically feed the same kibble every day and rotate your toppers, and you're good, okay? So don't beat yourself up if you don't know what to feed. Just start working on what to add to what you're already feeding. Start turning the tide. Okay, so my topper recipe contains meat, vegetables, fruits, fresh herbs, oils, cooking oils, and liquids such as spring water, bone broth, or homemade stock. That's the basis of the recipe. All right, so I already went into why you should add it to kibble. Okay, yeah, the other problem with kibbles, let me just mention this because I would at least, if you're insisting on feeding kibble or feel like you have no alternative right now, at least buy oven baked and not extruded, and buy one that says human grade, preferably even organic ingredients, because then you have some guarantee of bioavailability of nutrients. That's huge. You can read that label and you're saying it says a certain level of percentage of protein, right? And you're like, oh, my vet says that's all the protein he needs. Do you think he's going to be able to get that protein, utilize that protein if it's from an inferior source? He's not, because it's not bioavailable. Yeah, they don't have the amino acid profiles. The meats they typically put in these kibbles are the 3D meats, the dead, diseased, dying, anything, even the fruits and vegetables. It's all, and the grains, it's all the stuff that is not fit for human consumption, because otherwise they can get a lot more money for it, right? They're not going to sell it cheap to the dog food industry because they're paying hardly anything for these foods. Most of their money goes into packaging and advertising and that kind of thing. But I'm talking about the, I don't even want to say any, the lesser quality grocery store names. Okay, there you go. The ones you find in the grocery store or Walmart or something. Yeah. They have, and you wonder why the dog is fat but unhealthy. It's because they have to eat so much food just trying to get some nutrients out of it. Just feed a better food. Okay, so that's bioavailability. I already mentioned dehydration. Okay. Okay, yeah, it's true that, when you feed a better food, let me just say it this way. If you're feeding a poor quality food, you actually have to feed at least 30% more just for them to get the nutrients out of it because of bioavailability. All right, so, and I mentioned the carbohydrate content's way too high. Did I? Well, yeah, I must have, but that's the biggest problem with kibble, really. One of the biggest problems is that it's way too high in carbs. So you want to add more protein and more fresh fruits and vegetables and things. Okay. Beep, beep, beep. You're going to add hydration and flavor. Okay, slow cookers. I mean, as you can see, I have my 6 quart over there. I also have an 8 quart. I got my 6 quart going right now. It's almost always going in this house. I'm making bone broth, so that I started that this morning, and that will go 24 hours really for bone broth. I have some good quality bones in there, so I don't worry so much about the heavy metals, but they're still going to be in there. So that's why I don't just give my dog bowls of bone broth. I mix it. I mix it in with other things. So I make more stocks actually than bone broth, but I'm almost out in my freezer, so I'm making more. I do have a video on bone broths. Okay, slow cooker. What's to love about them? Where do I start? I love these things. I actually have 3. Why do I love them? Low and slow cooking preserves the nutrients and the flavor. You know what's funny? I've been cooking for my dogs for so many years, and what I have found is that when I either bake in the oven, low and slow, or I do a slow cooker, the dogs love the food more than if I cook them with high heat, which would be frying pan, you know, or stovetop. Any stovetop is going to be higher heat because it's a concentrated heat on the bottom. Even if you have it on low, it's still not the same because I always cook it on low, and I'll take as long as it takes, you know, to cook. But they still don't like it as much. So there you go. The flavor and the nutrients are preserved when you use your slow cooker. Also, for you working people, you can get this stuff done in the morning. Like if you're cooking your not just toppers, I'm talking about your meals, right? For your dog and for you. You can get it going in the morning. If you have a programmable, you set it for the amount of time that the recipe calls for. It'll automatically shut itself off and it'll go to warm so that it'll keep the food at a safe temperature so that it won't go off. I mean, come on, you need a programmable one. Now, I only buy manuals because I work from home and I like to be in control of everything. Yeah, I'm a bit of a control freak. But yeah, so the manuals are about half the price. Right now in the US, you can get an 8-quart manual for, I think, $40. And if you want a programmable, it's $80, you know. But it's a very wise investment if you aren't hanging around the house, you know, or if you work away from the home and you're worried about shutting it off. So wise investment to get a programmable. All right, so what do you need other than your slow cooker? You need a blender or an immersion blender, okay? Let me mention them in a minute. You need some kind of a straining spoon, you know, and containers. You're gonna need containers to freeze and something to put it in the refrigerator, right? Measuring cups, different, you know, basic kitchen things that you should have. All right, so immersion blenders. I started out my first immersion blender. I didn't know any better. I just bought the cheapest one. It was only 300 watts. That's what the cheaper ones are, 300 watts. And I found it wasn't strong enough. It was great for making a smoothie, right? But it wasn't strong enough to break up the vegetable matter to make a gravy and things like this. So I went up to the next level, really the highest level, but the price difference wasn't very much. And I got a better one, which is 1100 watts. That's strong enough. Look for one. If you go on Amazon, just make sure you type in the search engine, 1100 watt immersion blender, and it'll still bring up the 300 watt one. So you have to read the specs. Read the specs on these things. Okay, so the basic recipe is a pound of muscle meat, all right? Muscle meat is not organ meat. It's not skin. It's not bone. It's just muscle meat. It's like ground beef. That's muscle meat. Okay, chicken breast. That's muscle meat. Pork loin, boneless, right? That's muscle meat. All right, so it's a pound of muscle meat to 1.5 to 2 cups of fresh chopped veggies and fruit. So think about it. A pound is 2 cups. So your home cooked foods are typically going to be 50-50. 50% meat to 50% vegetable, fruit, grains if you're using them, you know, and supplements. All right. Now, back to this recipe. I say 2 cups of combined chopped veggies and fruit. Keep your starch and sugar content in mind when you're choosing your fruits and vegetables. All fruits are going to have higher sugar content, so the least amount of that 2 cups should be your fruit. Focus on your leafy greens and things like green beans and celery for your highest, and zucchini, right? Focus on them for the highest amount. The starchier veggies are like peas, sweet potatoes, butternut squash, yeah. So, yeah, you know what I'm saying. So you want to keep, you know, the largest proportion should be your leafy greens. All right, and what you're going to find when you start cooking for your dog anyway, or even adding things to their kibble, you're going to become a stool checker. Welcome to my world. Raw feeders, they're all stool checkers, right? But home cooks have to be too. So you're going to figure out very quickly when you make a recipe and your dog gets a little bit of a soft stool, you're going to say, okay, there's either too much oil in that, there's too much, you know, like if you're just cooking, not the topper, there's no organ in this, but if you're just cooking, you're going to say, oh, maybe I added too much organ meat, too much oil, just not enough fibrous vegetables, maybe just too much starch, too much sugar, right? And you'll start adjusting. All right, so you can add 2 to 4 cups of liquid to this, or you will add. You're gonna add, if you're making this for a kibble topper, you're gonna add more liquid. If you're making it for home cooked, you add less liquid. So that's why it's 2 to 4 cups, all right? What liquid do? I always do half of my homemade broth or stock, or you know, bone broth or stock, and half water, half spring water. That's how I do it. If you don't want to make or haven't tried making your own stock yet or your own bone broth yet, buy them only from reputable sources. And of course, the best ones you'll find in the freezer. That's green juju is the only one I found in the freezer, and that's the best. I mean, Hazel loves all of theirs. But Stella and Chewy's has one that's on the shelf, you know, so does Anna's Kitchen. And they have good ingredients, so that would be my next choice. Okay, you're also going to add a teaspoon of dried herbs or a tablespoon of fresh herbs to this. Herbs such as, these are culinary herbs, herbs such as thyme, parsley, rosemary, basil, fennel, sage, or dill, just to name a few, right? I'm including a link to a list of safe culinary herbs for your dogs in the description box. I'm also going to have a list in there of safe fruits and vegetables. Wait, I don't want to get off track. Okay, but let me just finish this. I want to say that certain herbs have a very strong flavor and aroma, so your dog may not like them, like fennel, even basil. Even parsley. Curly parsley has virtually no flavor, whereas flat leaf, or Italian it's also called, has a much stronger flavor. Hazel, though, loves all fresh herbs, so it doesn't matter. We always have flat leaf here because that's what we like. Okay. Yeah, what was I going to say about, oh yeah, the all the lists on the internet of the safe fruits and vegetables, they list many that are not actually toxic, but some part of them is. And it's always the plant, the leaves, the stems, the pits. They almost always list like avocado. All right, because of the person. The flesh actually has very little person. It's concentrated in the seed, you know, and the skin, and of course other parts of the plant. But all these lists say avocado is toxic to dogs. So no, it's not, because avoderm dog food would have killed dogs long ago if that were true. But yeah. Oh, cherries. You'll find cherries on a lot of the toxic lists. No, cherries are not toxic to dogs, but there again, the pit is, the seed, the stem, the leaves, other parts of the plant are, all right? So that's why they add a lot of these to these lists. A lot of things that aren't actually toxic, but some part of the plant is, but it's always the plant that you don't eat, so you shouldn't feed it to your dog. But if you're gonna throw a handful of cherries in your home-cooked recipe, dog food recipe in your crock pot, then it's gonna leach out of those pits. They have to be pitted. So yeah, you have to use some common sense. Come on, reinstate the common sense that people now think they don't have because of the internet. You have it, come on. All right. Okay, turmeric. You can add turmeric to this. I don't, because Hazel does not like the taste of turmeric. She doesn't like the smell or the taste, but I can put it in my bone broth. It's in that bone broth. And I put it in my stock because she doesn't notice it in there. But when I make my meal topper, I don't add it. And when I make like a food recipe, I don't add it. to that. But here's how you add it. And so many of the videos online for home cooked dog food and the recipes you find in these cookbooks and stuff, they don't mention the black pepper. You need the black pepper. If you're using turmeric, you need the black pepper. Why? Because it enhances the absorption of the curcumin. That's why you're using turmeric, right? It's for the curcumin. By up to 2,000%. I don't even think it's up to, I think it is like 2,000%. It's a huge, huge, difference. You're not gonna get the curcumin out of it without the black pepper. So don't even bother, you're just wasting your turmeric. So what is the rule for that? 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, ground black pepper, not peppercorns, ground black pepper, 1/4 teaspoon for every teaspoon of turmeric, okay? So if you wanna add to the basic topper recipe, if you wanna add turmeric, if you know your dog likes it and will eat it, add, I suggest that you would start with 1/2 teaspoon of turmeric, which means you would add 1/8 of a teaspoon of black pepper to that. Yes, your dogs can have black pepper and they're not gonna notice that it's in there. It's gonna be such a small amount, in the overall recipe. Okay, what else? Okay, so this that I just showed you, that I have to get back in the freezer soon. So the one I just made 2 days ago had 1 pound of lamb chops. That's what I had, right? So I had to be very careful to get every little bit of the bone out of there. You don't want your dog ingesting any cooked bone. And I added 2 cups of a combination of things I had in the fridge, right? I had spinach, zucchini, cauliflower, and apple. To that, I added a tablespoon of fresh thyme. I keep my fresh herbs in the freezer. I mean, I also have fresh ones in the fridge, but I always have them in the freezer so that I have them. So are they really fresh? I guess now they're frozen, but they're frozen fresh herbs. I added a tablespoon of fresh thyme, and I added a tablespoon of EVOO. That's extra virgin olive oil. All right. I had to let it cook on low for 6 hours in my slow cooker because of the bone. If I used a boneless meat, ground or chunks, I would only cook it for 4 hours. And that's normally what I use, boneless. And if you're worried about picking every little, because you really have to get in there with your fingers to make sure you got every little I've pulled little pieces of bone this small out, Yeah, you got to be careful. And if you don't want to deal with that, just always use boneless for this. All right, it's not bone broth. You don't need the bone. Okay. So then when it was done, right, after my kitchen timer went off, telling me it was done, I went over and turned off the old slow cooker, the old manual slow cooker, and I strained out the meat, set it in a bowl to cool, and then I took my immersion blender and I just went in there and made gravy out of it, right? Chopped up the meat, put it back in, threw out the bone, done. Okay, did I mention immersion blenders? You want 1100 watts if you're gonna break up a lot of vegetable matter. The cheapest immersion blenders are only 300 watts. That's what I started with, and it was okay for smoothies, but I very quickly discovered that I needed a stronger one, and I did some research, and I found out that the good ones for this, you ever see the ones they use in kitchens, professional kitchens? Oh my gosh, it's like 6 feet long, and who knows what it weighs, and oh my God, I can't even remember or imagine the power that thing has. But yeah, you need at least 1100 watts, and that's what the better ones are. And the price difference isn't great either. So you can easily afford an 1100 watt one. If you can afford a 300 watt one, for a few dollars more, you can get the 1100 watts. All right, so yeah, then you have this wonderful gravy. Okay, so depending on your dog's food allergies or sensitivities, Hazel, as I've mentioned a million times, is allergic to chicken and turkey. And she also, I don't give her much grain because everything makes her itchy. But as far as if you know what your dog can have and what they can't have, great meats to use are lamb, any poultry like chicken, duck, quail, or turkey, 90% lean beef, pork, goat, bison, venison, any fresh or frozen fish such as salmon, cod, flounder, or tilapia. I rotate between, these are your cooking oils now, I rotate between olive, sunflower, and coconut. You don't want to add your fatty acid oils to this, to anything that you're cooking. Your fatty acid oils, those are your omega-3 and 6 fatty acid supplements that everybody's using, especially if you have an allergy dog, right? She gets salmon oil and a few other different kinds of fish oils. They're heat sensitive, so you add them to the bowl right before you serve the food, all right? You don't want to cook them. Beep, beep, beep. Okay. Also notice that I don't use organ meat in my topper recipe. Organ meat should only be 10% of the dog's diet. You'll know right away if you give too much, they're going to get soft stool, and then you have too many minerals and things, you know, and especially liver. People don't seem to realize that liver is the filter in the body, so unless it's organic, it's going to have toxins in it. You know, you don't want to overfeed organ meat. So 10%. So what do? Oh, here's a good tip. I buy freeze-dried organ meat. I buy all my freeze-dried raw food and organs and whole duck necks and everything. I buy it all from Fresh's Best. Their link will be in the description box. They are a small company. They make everything in small batches. And I just take the organ and I figure out that the 10%, oh yeah, you know what? I'm gonna put that in the description box too, because I know that, I have that written somewhere. How much freeze-dried organ meat, I bet I already included it in the recipe, how much freeze-dried organ meat to add to your dog food to keep it 10%. Because freeze-dried, all the moisture's been taken out, so now you can't just go by weight anymore. Yeah, I just crumble it up and put it right on the top of the food because Hazel loves all those organ meats. But Fresh's Best also has the dust. You can just buy the food dust. It's make sure you don't get just the plain chicken dust, and I think they have a plain beef dust too. I know they have just a plain chicken meat dust, so you don't want that. You want the food dust. Every food they make, they sell a dust at a considerable savings, and I mean considerable. And yeah, you can rehydrate that, and then it's like canned food, you know. But it's just freeze-dried raw, you know, and it's so good for them. But I also sprinkle that on top of food, her cooked food. My God, she loves this stuff. Okay, great for traveling, by the way, freeze-dried food. Okay, so I already went over the whole thing here about the safe lists, and I think I got everything covered. Okay, so the basic recipe will be in the description box below. I have it all typed up already here in front of me. And I'll make sure I add how much organ meat, freeze-dried organ meat, how to figure that out, because yeah, I have that written somewhere. I just can't think of it right now. And I'll have the list for the culinary herbs and the fruits and veggies. Okay, that's it. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but no, I think I've said enough. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. And my remote only turns on, it doesn't turn off. So bye, everybody.